Welcome back. In the quiet heart of Leicestershire, along the calm waters of the River Soar, lies a village that once echoed with the thunder of industry. Today the fields are still, the tracks are rusted, and the old buildings, once alive with fire and dust and human toil, stand like solemn witnesses to a story long forgotten. But if you listen carefully, beneath the hum of distant traffic and the whisper of wind through the old stone, you can almost hear it. The rumble of machinery, the shouts of workmen, the crackle of burning lime. This is the story of John Ellis and Sons factory, an empire built on limestone and ambition, and paid for with flesh, bone and lives. The story begins with a modest brick structure near the railway line, built sometime between 1915 and 1944. No one is entirely sure whether it was an office, a depot or something in between, but what matters is not what it was, but what it saw. It stood beside the railway that shaped everything around it, a railway that became the artery of an industrial leviathan. To understand the factory, we must travel back to the early 19th century, when the land here was already being quarried for its abundant limestone. Long before the concrete works emerged, families had been cutting stone from these fields, filling the village air with dust and the smell of earth. It was a way of life. And then came John Ellis, a Quaker farmer from Beaumont Leys, who helped spark a revolution. In 1832, he joined the visionary minds behind the Leicester and Swannington Railway, one of the earliest railways in England. Coal now flowed into Leicester with unprecedented speed, while limestone and lime products could be transported with equal ease. It was Ellis who sold coal at Westbridge, and Ellis who oversaw lime arriving from Bredon and Barrow upon Soar, the village whose fate he would ultimately shape. The opening of the Midland Counties Railway in 1840 fanned the flames of this industrial growth. Barrow's factories expanded, its kilns multiplied, and the village began the long transformation from quiet rural settlement to a powerhouse of stone, steam and sweat. By the mid-1840s, the Ellis Company had established a sprawling complex off Sileby Road. Over time, more than 30 lime kilns rose from the ground like enormous brick bottles. They glowed day and night, their fires fuelled by coal and their smoke spreading across the village. A narrow tramway carried stone from nearby Delphs to the kilns. Later, the tramway was replaced by a standard railway track. The air in Barrow was thick, so thick that many said you could taste it. The smoke carried a pungent aroma that became infamous. Locals insisted it had medicinal properties. Some even believed it cured tuberculosis. Doctors from London reportedly sent patients to the village to inhale the healing air. And yet, in cruel contrast, the same dust that was celebrated for curing the weak was quietly killing the strong. The labourers who worked the quarries, the drift mines, the kilns, these men, breathing pure limestone dust day after day, developed severe lung disease. Many died young, too many. Only after breathing aids were introduced did the tide of suffering begin to slow, but for many families, help came too late. As Barrow prospered, its workers paid the price. As the 1880s dawned, the focus shifted. The factory began processing plaster, then cement, and finally concrete, the material that would define the 20th century. In the 1890s, Barrow's factory produced everything a growing nation needed: paving slabs, curbstones, sewer pipes, roof beams, water towers, reservoirs, and even artificial stone. The granite came from Mount Sorrel, the strength came from fire. The labour came from those who worked not for glory, but for the desperate wages that kept their families fed. In 1920, the company merged with the Mount Sorrel Granite Company, acquiring 50 more acres of land. Concrete became the beating heart of Barrow. Even after lime production ceased in 1925 and cement in 1935, the concrete operations continued at full force. During the Second World War, Barrow's factory contributed to the war effort by producing air raid shelters, pit props and materials for army huts. After the war, the country needed homes, and Barrow provided them, manufacturing prefabricated houses that rose from the devastation of bombed cities. In 1955 alone, over 55,000 tonnes of concrete products left the factory's gates. But behind those staggering numbers, tragedy lingered in the shadows. The first known tragedy occurred in 1870, and it set the tone for the many that would follow. An 18-year-old worker named Thomas West was carrying an empty hand barrow down a plank into a delf, a deep open quarry cut. The plank, 11 inches wide, had been powdered to prevent slipping, but powdered or not, Thomas lost his footing. He plummeted between 16 and 20 feet. He survived the fall only long enough for rescuers to pull him out. His arm was broken and his skull fractured. He died shortly after. The inquest declared the death unavoidable, a tragic accident, but for his family it was not merely tragic, it was life-shattering. 4 years later, the factory boasted in advertisements of its products roofing slates, gravestones, gateposts, cheese presses, troughs, cisterns. Yet behind every item stood men like Thomas, invisible, replaceable and forever at risk. In 1886, the Ellis family held a grand dinner for 450 workers. The celebration was bright and warm, held beneath a vast tent beside the works. But even that night of joy felt like a flickering candle in a storm, because every worker in that tent knew how quickly a simple shift could become fatal. And in 1892, it did again. A young labourer named William Squires, aged 23, fell from a plank into a delf just as Thomas West had before him. He died soon after, but this time the loss struck even deeper. William was the only support for his blind, widowed mother. With his death, she lost not only her son, but her lifeline. By 1913, the factory's workers had endured decades of danger, poor ventilation, low pay and unforgiving hours. Their patience broke. That spring, they demanded a halfpenny increase in wages. A small amount, but vital to families living at the edge of hunger. The owners refused. Only 6 men returned to work. More than 40 were fired and handed their insurance cards. Many households lost their income overnight. The strike dissolved, but resentment lingered for years. In 1915, tragedy returned in a more horrific form. A worker named Frederick Dakin was feeding material into a concrete tube filling machine when disaster struck. The machine seized his hand. In an instant, part of the hand and 3 fingers were torn away. Dakin's life changed forever, but the end of his suffering was not the end of his story. He fought, not against machinery this time, but against the company and its insurers. They argued that with an artificial hand he should be paid less, that he was capable only of boys' work, and that the compensation he received should be reduced. The legal hearings dragged on. His pride was questioned. His ability to earn a living was scrutinised. He had a wife and 2 children, and every shilling mattered. At last, the court ruled in his favour, preserving the compensation he desperately needed. It was a rare victory for a worker in that era. But the factory machinery would claim more lives soon enough. Nothing in the factory's long history compares to the horrors of 1934, the year a crane took a man's life. His name was Albert Reeves, aged 42. He was working near a locomotive crane, loosening moulds on concrete pipes. The crane had no warning whistle, despite regulations requiring one. A worker assisting the crane driver testified that no signals were given, no lookouts were assigned. The unwritten rule was simple: every man must look out for himself. On that day, Reeves had his back turned as he worked. The crane swung. A witness heard a cry. He turned just in time to see the machine crush Reeves against a pipe. The injuries were so horrific that the witness fainted while giving evidence at the inquest. The crane driver confessed that he had never read the safety regulations. The factory had not required him to. For this failure and for the life lost, the company was fined £25. £25 for a man's life. In April 1957, tragedy struck again, this time involving a new hopper mechanism installed only 4.5 days earlier. 2 men operated the machine, James Adcock and 52-year-old John Harris. On the morning of the accident, Adcock stepped out briefly to move a barrow of concrete. When he returned, he noticed Harris's wheelbarrow still under the machine, seemingly abandoned mid-task. Something felt wrong. Adcock searched the shed, calling out. When he approached the front of the machine, he saw Harris's cap. Then he saw blood. And then, in the narrow space between the machine's upright frame and the rising hopper, he found the body. Investigators believed Harris had reached in to remove empty cement sacks caught on the lip of the hopper, thinking he could do so quickly before the machinery caught up with him. But the hopper rose sooner than expected, trapping him fatally against the framework. Death was instantaneous. Harris left behind a widow, a son and 3 daughters. His death was ruled misadventure, but the families of Barrow knew better. They knew it was the machine, the pace, the pressure and the unforgiving nature of industrial labour. By 1971, the once mighty Ellis empire had dwindled. A new company, Emelux, took over what remained of the wall finish operations. The kilns cooled, the dust settled, and the rail sidings fell silent. Today the old structures still stand, weathered, hollow, but heavy with memory. They hold the echoes of men who gave their lives for industry, men whose names rarely appear in history books, but whose blood and sweat built the foundations of modern Britain. Factories rise, empires crumble, but the stories of the men who built them, the men who worked in the dust, who hauled stone from the earth, who stood before roaring kilns and grinding machines, those stories do not disappear. They linger, waiting to be remembered. In Barrow-upon-Soar, the old factory walls may crumble, the kilns may rust, but the legacy remains. A legacy carved in limestone, written in concrete, paid for with lives. If this story moved you, please like the video, subscribe and share this forgotten chapter of our industrial past. These were ordinary men whose lives mattered and whose stories deserve to be told. Stinks of wee. See, there's a little fireplace in the corner there. It's just started raining and the rain's coming in. completely collapsed in. As you can see, look, all the beams up there are all burnt. There's a door there, but I don't think it really goes anywhere. We'll see how much we can see upstairs. Probably not a lot. It's been on my list a while. I don't think there's an upstairs. Not that I can go anywhere, I don't think. Okay, it's been a big fire at some point. Shame. There's a little room there. I'm not risking going on these floors. Yeah, interesting little building. As I said, it's been on my radar a while. Nice to just tick it off.